I was reading this teaching of Yogi Bhajan, kind of very mystically. He's talking about Broadway and what happens in New York City on Broadway, and that it's not a broad street at all. It's actually quite a narrow street. And we were literally driving by Broadway, so I feel like the winds are in our favor. It was very mystical. But he was talking about basically that why are the actors the kind of gods in pop culture? And the reason that they are is because they know how to play their part well. And they were very, very, interested in drama as humans. And we want everyone to play their part really well. And we want the drama to be high and the plot twists to be good and the kind of whole experience to be exhilarating. We want that. So this is why we kind of put that whole scene as kind of exalted in celebrity, because we want to connect through drama. And we want to connect our own personal drama to the kind of collective drama, and that the drama is what kind of connects us. Now, the difference between the actor and your life, your relationships, your success, your, kind of personal life, your professional life, the difference between it is that you are not necessarily consciously or enjoyably playing your part. And so then you get frustrated and angry and, unfulfilled, and then all sorts of other things happen, which is, adulthood, depression, our depressed adulthoods on planet Earth. So all these kind of unfulfillments happen because we're not really playing our parts. And he said, in this kind of talk, he said, Freud had it right in one way, that that these kind of patterns are played out in the childhood, and then they come into the adulthood, and then they're played out, continue to be played out until your grave, basically. But he stopped at the phobia, that these patterns were, they're phobic in essence. And that's kind of where he stopped his analysis of the human psyche. But Yogi Bhajan said the yogic scientists have known for thousands and thousands, 5,000 plus years, that the phobia that's created through you learning the drama of the family and the trauma of the family in the early childhood years, the phobias that are created that then get played out over and over again and create the lack of fulfillment in our relationships, lack of fulfillment in our careers, lack of fulfillment in our different kind of professional and personal endeavors. Those phobias can be healed and solved. We have a technology for that. That's what we're doing here. So in the Freudian and then Jung kind of took that, and he took it further and deeper. And Jung himself said, well, actually this Kundalini yoga stuff we know actually is way better than the psychotherapeutics, but we're not really sure about it yet. That was in 1931. But he said, this definitely, if you can move the energy in a frequency past the drama and the trauma in the body-mind system, it's much more efficient. So, and we know that to be true. But where Yogi Bhajan said that Freud kind of, didn't go deeper is that these patterns become kind of phenomenons because they go so deep into our incarnational stream. And then we pick families and parents when we reincarnate to kind of amplify the pattern. That's called samskara. That's called karma. Those are, kind of the spiritual words for those are used a lot of times wrongly in reference to some version of these kinds of patterns. So the phenomenon of the pattern, that's where we have to kind of go even deeper into the reprogramming, because then we're dealing with, the incarnation upon incarnation. And some of this stuff, you'll see this in families where the grandparents were really successful. They pass the success down to the kids or the grandkids, and though that generation can't hold the frequency of the success, and they just blow it up. That's very, very common. Or you have the opposite, where the generations behind you were, kind of had a lot of poverty consciousness or a lot of strife, or this is maybe a little more common. A lot of strife, a lot of, all the genocides and the traumas and the epigenetics, and so you're carrying that through the generations. And so that is kind of part of the phenomenon that you're working with when you're trying to figure out why you keep on kind of recreating these failure type of experiences, or these disappointments or lack of fulfillment. So we're going to spend the whole weekend looking at, in all of the different perspectives, how we can go into some of these, both the phobias, because that's one level of it, the phobia of the success, the phobia of the fulfillment, the phobia of our, kind of stepping into a greater part of our incarnation, or a greater part of our mission. There's a major kind of phobia, and that phobic pattern is creating a lot of, we'll call it, drama and trauma. But you're not playing your part as well as you could, and so then it becomes not enjoyable, particularly for the people who have to deal with you. But for yourself, it's not enjoyable. So then you're not enjoying your human incarnation. Now, you want to fundamental of success. Somebody who's enjoying themselves, somebody who's enjoying whatever they're doing. That's a very magnetic energy that creates the kind of whatever things that you need, whether it creates resources, because it's very, very magnetic and you can't fake it. There's no, especially in this day and age, and we'll talk a lot about that over the weekend, because so much is changing. So we now teach Rama Business School different semesters all through the year, and eventually this will become a whole kind of school in our university. And I've had many people who have gotten Ivy League MBA educations come into Rama Business School over these years and say, this was much more valuable to me than anything I learned in my Ivy League MBA, in terms of actually being able to kind of utilize these techniques of being human in a very complex time on the planet to do something that's actually going to fulfill me. So we've heard that over and over and over again. And one of my proudest things of Rama Business School, and just Rama in general, is now we have thousands of businesses that have been created from these times together. Thousands of successful businesses and all sorts of turnarounds, and in terms of projects or ways that we were kind of putting our energy in a certain place, or looking at something a certain way that gets totally kind of reprogrammed, the phobias, then deeper into the phenomenons. So some of these deeper, some scaric failure patterns or fears of success, or reasons why in the epigenetics, literally the genome is responding to a certain level of your kind of nervous system strengthening, or your we'll say holding certain levels of prosperity. The genome is responding to that. That's the glass ceiling, and that's what the kind of science of epigenetics is now proving. We've known it for 5,000 years in yogic science, but it's starting to be proven that the actual DNA is responding to something that you've been carrying through the lineages of some sort of kind of glass ceiling of what it would look like to hold wealth, or hold resources, or use resources in a way that they haven't been used on this planet. And one of the reasons why this is a huge part of my mission is that I grew up around poor spiritual people. And it's a very, very deep kind of thing in the collective consciousness, and why we haven't been able to get much done. Because if we want to create revolutions, we have to have resources. And so the people who've held resources, and the resource kind of management of the planet is completely shifting. And in 2020, we're going to see a huge shift of this. In a lot of different ways. But so, the resource management is shifting, because it used to be people who had certain kind of knowledge had power, and that's no longer true in the information age. So now it's what you do. how you do the things you do and what you do with the things you have. And then how you kind of utilize your resource management in a way that is intelligent and kind of looking at a broader picture than just, kind of a fiat currency that's based on a commodity that no longer is even the most valued commodity on the planet. So we're just, we're in a very interesting time around this. And because of the technological age, there's so many opportunities that there never was before. So it's a fascinating subject that we could just, we'll dive as deeply as we can into over this time together. Because when in Rama Business School, we're looking at kind of all of the levels of where the phobias, the phenomenons, and then all of the accumulated accomplishment. So you not only bring the samskara or the phobia or the phenomenon or the epigenetic kind of experience of the lineage, you not only bring that with you, but in the yogic technology, we know that you also bring accomplishment from other lives. And part of what we're interested in, and this is what happens to all of us when we're practicing and when we're getting the vibration into a certain frequency, part of what happens is that you basically start to be able to open rooms of your consciousness or your destiny that were not available to you before you could reach that particular altitude. So basically, you couldn't get to that level. The elevator, you went into that elevator that only goes from 1 to 9, and you weren't able to get to the elevator that takes you from 9 to 18. And that's basically what we're doing. A lot of what happens is you start to kind of access incarnational accomplishment that you have brought with you that you forgot in the birth process and some of the, the drama and the trauma. And then, there's nothing worse than people refusing to play their parts well. Yogi Bhajan said, leadership is someone who understands what their part is and they play it really well, and then everyone around them starts to play their parts better. And it's all a play. So it's all just, it's all, and that doesn't mean that it's not, it doesn't matter or that it's not significant, but we can say one thing. It's not as significant as we think it is. People always ask me, like, are you excited about ... And of course, I'm a misanthrope. So I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm never, ever excited. But I'm not upset either. It's like I broke there's the scene of the crime over there. I broke my foot over there a couple weeks ago. I was like, are you upset? How are you doing? It's like, I'm fine. And then it's like, are you excited? No, I'm fine. Why? Because I've positioned my whole kind of psyche to, you play your part the best you can. And you do that every day, and you try to do it better than you did the day before. So then you're just trying to perfect that scene. And the only person, as you all have heard me say, the only person that you can impress is yourself. So you just, try to get more, in the nucleus of the frequency of the part that you're playing. And then if you're really kind of, playing a sophisticated game, you're aware that you're playing the part. So then you understand that you're creating a narrative, and that narrative is called your life. And you can change it anytime you want. And it's funny, and the joke is on you. And any kind of seriousness that you have about it is funny too, because the joke's on you. So it becomes, and so there's a lightness that comes with that, and an ability in that lightness is a very creative frequency. Because and it will work with some, people get real serious about, especially people who are doing something great in the world. The people out here, I'm sure we have people in the nonprofit sectors and all sorts doing amazing, beautiful things in the world. You can't hold a mantle in a certain kind of seriousness and expect to be able to make it to the finish line. You just can't.